Alright there guys, and welcome back to another video. Today the channel is starting its brand new venture into the world of podcasting. Welcome to the inaugural first episode of the Out of Storage podcast. I said in my last video the scenery was going to be ever so slightly different, and I guess you could say it is, but it's very, very similar to normal, but ever so slightly different. We've just moved positions ever so slightly. So why am I even doing this? Well, the name of the podcast actually gives you a good idea of why. Back in the summer of 2022, I had a storage issue, which stopped me from uploading videos the way I normally do, in the style I normally do. And for a couple of months, I didn't know how to fix that. But then I did an update, and that sorted it out. So I was able to make 3 more videos in that style. But at the very beginning of this year, that same issue happened again. And I actually had this idea then, but now I'm going to put it into practice. I'm actually going to use the idea now. So because I've had so much storage issues, that's why I've decided to call this the Out of Storage podcast. And before anyone goes into it doesn't look like a podcast, and so what? Does it have to look professional in a studio with really good microphones and all the equipment? Does it have to look like that to be a podcast? No, it doesn't. It can look however. The person making it can have it look however they want. And yes, mine looks like it's very similar to my normal videos, but that's just the way I roll. So, the topic for the very first episode of the podcast is old gaming memories. So, we're going to be going very far back, maybe just less than 20 years ago, for some of my really old gaming memories. The first console I ever had was the PS1, the original. And I only had 3 games for it, but I remember all 3 games so well. I had Toy Story Racer, I had Toy Story 2, that was a very much loved PS1 platformer, and I also had Ridge Racer 2. I've only ever played 2 Ridge Racer games, which was that one, and Ridge Racer 7 on the PS3. I don't know if they even still make them. I haven't seen a Ridge Racer game in so long. I haven't even seen a game that came after Ridge Racer 7. But I remember Ridge Racer 2 so well, because there was a snowy track, and I remember I loved drifting on that snowy track. That's something I really remember very well. And I think I had a strange version of Toy Story 2, because my game was in black and white, and I've asked around, is the game supposed to be in black and white, or is there a feature that can turn the game black and white? And there isn't. I had a very strange version of the game where there wasn't the colour of the game, all the colour in the game wasn't there. Those are the oldest memories of games I can remember. I was about 4 years old or so when I played those games. I remember I could never get outside of... I could never get outside of Andy's house in Toy Story 2. I was able to get outside of the house physically, but any levels outside the house I could never get to. I didn't know what to do. So I didn't get very far in the game. And I didn't have any, like, memory cards for the PS1 either. So I was never able to save my game and continue from the last point. I always had to restart the game all over again. For Toy Story Race, I had a quite a fun time because I always think I played, like, if I can't even remember if there was a battle mode in the game, you know, like the battle mode in Mario Kart. But I feel like that's the type of thing I played when I played Toy Story Racer back in the day. But those are my old PS1 memories. But I've got some better. I've got some slightly more recent than that old gaming memories, because I played quite a few PS2 games back in the day as well. Now, I didn't have a PS2. I never owned one. But I did have the PS3 that was backwards compatible with PS2 games. Why they decided, let's get, for future versions of the PS3, let's get rid of that feature so people can no longer play PS2 games on their PS3. And then the PS4 literally did not have that feature at all, and then the PS5 decided to bring it back because they realised that backwards compatibility is a good feature and should always be used. But the old memories I have with PS2 games are Tekken 4 and Tekken 5. Those games were so great. I remember I always played the Devil Within game mode of Tekken 5, and I've heard people say that they actually really despise that game mode and think it's terrible, which I find it quite funny because when I played it as a kid, I really, really enjoyed it. I only ever transformed into Devil Jin once in any time I played that game mode, but it was quite fun when I did because I was just massacring all the enemies. My favourite character in Tekken 4 and 5 was Yoshimitsu, the guy with the sword. I always thought he had a really badass design, and I especially liked his design in Tekken 4. Because it looked like he had a mushroom on his head, didn't it? And if you're wondering who my favorite female character in Tekken is, it's Ling Xiaoyu. And before you ask, is it because you think she's quite cute? Yes. I do. Yes, that is the reason, and because I wasn't half bad with her when I played as her in Tekken 4 and 5. Now, the next one, the next old gaming memories, this one I've actually talked about in a video in the past. So some of you, very, very low chance that anyone who has subscribed to me all the way back in 2017, right at the beginning of my channel, will remember this. But on the off chance that someone from that far long ago is still here, watching today, the first two Dragon Ball Z Budokai games, that's where I actually discovered the show. Through those games, I'd actually never heard of the show when I played those games. I didn't even know what anime was, despite I'd actually watched it before, because I'd watched Pokemon when I was a kid. So I'd actually watched anime before without even knowing what it is. I remember that's where I first discovered Dragon Ball, the first two Budokai games. And I still wish that when they made the Budokai HD collection in 2012, I think it was, I really wish they'd have put all three games in instead of just two of them. Like, I get it, people like Budokai 1 and 3 the most, but I'd have liked to see Budokai 2 there as well, because Budokai 2's story mode was unique. It was like a board game. The way you moved around the world was was you took turns to where you go, like a board game. It was unique. No Dragon Ball game has ever tried something like that since. And I had a lot of fun with the old DBC Budokai games. Especially with the fact that I thought this is how knowledgeable I was about Dragon Ball back in the day. I thought Goten was a match for Kid Buu. I remember I really wanted to unlock Kid Buu because I remember my cousin showing me some gameplay of Kid Buu and how easily he was just beating everyone. So I'd always wanted to know how to unlock Kid Buu in Budokai 2, but I never ended up doing so. The furthest I ever got in Budokai 2 was to Supreme Kai when he first appears and you have to fight him. That's as far as I ever got, to fighting Supreme Kai. And I guess one more game on the PS2 was SpongeBob SquarePants Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. I mentioned on my second channel in 2021 that when there were three main SpongeBob games that came out in the early 2000s that people played. There was the SpongeBob movie game, which of course was based on the first SpongeBob movie, which is so goated. There was Battle for Bikini Bottom, which I played the rehydrated version on my second channel in 2021, and the first week of 2022. And there was Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, which is the game I played when I was younger. Revenge of the Flying Dutchman was actually was the game out of those three that was the most disliked. So of course it was the one I ended up playing. It's funny because when originally Revenge of the Flying Dutchman was on the PlayStation Store on the PS3, but the game was so buggy and didn't work properly that Sony actually took it off the store because it just didn't, because it was that bad and it just did not work. But my version, the version of the game I had, never had that problem. It never had the issue of being buggy and just crashing. I think that's because I played the PS2 backwards compatibility version of the game on my PS3 rather than getting it off the PS3's store. So I was playing the original version of the game. So I think that's probably what it was. And the furthest I ever got in that game was I got to the Krabby Patty delivery section of the game, where you've got to deliver make 4 deliveries to 4 different houses in a time limit. I never could beat that. I managed to deliver 3 of the 4 patties at once, but I never knew where to go for the last one. What I didn't know what you actually had to do was you actually had to go and find Patrick with the final delivery. That's how you beat the 4th one, but I didn't know that. Again, this is like 2000. This is probably around 2007. This is 2007, 2008. I didn't even know what YouTube was yet. I'd never heard of it yet. I didn't find out about YouTube until 2009, so I didn't even know YouTube was a thing when I was doing these things. So I couldn't just go and look up a walkthrough because I didn't know they existed back then. But I did enjoy myself with Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. If I had the chance to beat the game now, I think I could. Back then I couldn't, but now I'm pretty certain I could beat the game. Just like I have beaten Battle for Bikini Bottom. Although the rehydrated version of the game is probably easier than the original from 2003. And those are all the really old gaming memories I have. Probably should have mentioned this at the very beginning of the episode, but these podcast episodes are going to be about 10 to 20 minutes, maybe a bit longer than that sometimes. And before you ask, can a podcast episode be that short? Yes, I've looked around at different podcasts, and yes, some podcasts have episodes less than 20 minutes long. I know that a lot of the big podcasts are always like 1 to 2 hours long. Sometimes they could be like 2.5 hours long, but I don't have the time or the storage to be able to make episodes that long. That's why I want that they should be around 10 to 20 minutes. But yeah, I think going forward for the channel, with how many times this channel has had to change, we're gonna be doing variations of gameplay videos, not let's plays, just gameplay videos, and episodes of the podcast. So, thank you everyone for watching the very first episode of the Out of Storage podcast. Hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and until next time, catch you later.